Greetings and welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm, where we are continuing to build our gigantic raised bed garden using a stone retaining wall. This is the second video where we're actually working on the wall, and just to remind you of a couple points from the first video, this particular series is focused on the mechanics of building the wall itself. The details of soil building, soil structure, why you build a certain type of raised bed versus another is going to be covered separately in videos that are focused on those aspects. This is a dry laid stone wall. It's going to be a planted wall and will house our strawberry garden. What we did in the first video was to set these foundation stones. Okay. Off camera, I pulled in a bunch of dirt. And now the real hard work of building the stone wall is about to begin. The purpose of the foundation stones is to provide a flat surface. If you remember in the talk from the first video, these are typically round bottom, flat top. That round bottom makes it easy to get them in and arrange them and wiggle them in so that you have a nice flat top. That's one of the purposes here. The second purpose is to provide a non-compressible surface. So I'm going to re-reference the chalk talk I did on the geometry of retaining walls. You want them to lean backwards, lean into the soil. In order for that to happen, the back of the stone needs to be on a compressible surface and the front of the stone a non-compressible surface. So this foundation layer, these are very small stones. These are way too small to build a real wall out of from here up. But they will provide a non-compressible surface which will help get our stones tipping backward rather than forward. Okay? Now, the next course is called the master course. And if you look at historical stone walls and retaining walls, sometimes these are massive, massive stones. We're not going to go to that extreme for this little strawberry bed, but we do want to make sure that all of these stones are at least twice the size of the first foundation course. Okay? Also, we want to make sure that these are long. This is a good place to use your really long but still a little bit narrow stones, because we want to start tying all of this together along in the longitudinal direction. Now this is curved, so it doesn't have a true longitudinal direction, but be that as it may. We want long stones here to start tying all of these together, okay? And we want some dirt to use as our mortar substitute to fill in the gaps between them. Again, planted wall, we need the ability for plant roots to penetrate this easily, so all of the gaps are going to be taken up by some soil. It does matter what kind of soil you use for this. You don't want a super heavy clay, and you don't want something with much organic matter in it. So you want a nice, loose mineral soil for this prospect. What I'm using here is sort of a sandy silt type material. This is fill that was scraped up off of our driveway the last time we graded it, and I have a big pile up over there. So I'm hauling this down and putting it to good use for this wall. In laying this course, we want nice long rocks. We want to bridge gaps in the first course, and we want them to have at least one good, really nice face. This is the first course that's really going to be highly visible. This foundation course is going to get pressed all the way down in flush. As the ground heaves, these are just going to get sucked down, and they'll be level. You'll never really see these. But these you will see. These are going to stick up above. Okay, so we want nice looking stones, at least on one face. We want to cover cracks and tie these together, and we want these to extend a little bit back from the foundation stones. So when we're setting one, pull some dirt down and kind of mount it up. Put your stone on it, and then rock it down in to compress that soil behind it. Compress that as well as you can. Okay? If it tips forward a little bit, that's okay as long as it doesn't get extreme. We want it basically level to a little bit of forward tip because this is going to compress a lot back in behind and give us that back lean. Okay? We want this front face to be as near vertical as possible. And we want it to be nice and stable. That's a nice stable stone. Okay? Once we're done with that, we're going to pull the soil back to level with the back of this stone. Okay? And then go around to the next one. So I'll get a couple set and then I'll show you the next step. This is why we need a bunch of rocks, right? You've got to get the right rock to fit in the right spot or the wall won't hold together. And what we want is for all of these to pass the wiggle test, okay? So if I put my hand on this wiggle, they're all solid, okay? What won't work is if you see this one is a little bit tall relative to this one, okay? This one's a little lumpy, so here's a good, glorious example of failing the wiggle test, right? We fail it that way, we fail it this way, that ain't gonna work. So what I want to do is I want to look at my stones and find ones. This is a little proud of this one. So I want to find one that has kind of two levels to it. So this guy looks good, right? Here we have a little bit of a depression. Here we have a little bit proud, but it's not wedge shaped. This is flat and this is flat. It's just got two levels. So this will work well at this spot. So if I put it here, we're good. Has a little bit of side wiggle. That's just because this isn't perfectly flat. That'll be okay when we pack dirt in it, in the back of it here. But now we have a gap to make up. So this is where some stones like this can come in handy. It's not a huge stone, but it can help me make up this gap. Okay? So there we have a combination of rocks that'll fit quite nicely and are already relatively stable. So now we'll pull the dirt forward and pick out all of the small rocks, chuck them back in. They're not your friends. And we'll get this one set in here first. Okay, he's passing the wiggle test. Mound the dirt up a little bit and really crunch it in to compress it. They're on that back side. And then this guy. Okay. And now it's just a little bit of that soil in there. He's passing the wiggle test. Okay. You can see, let me get this one out of the way here. We're getting a nice even line on this edge. And it's ragged in the middle. That's okay. This will never show. There's going to be rocks out to here till we're totally done. We'll bring the soil against this and pack in all of these little holes. Everywhere you see a gap, pack it with soil. Okay? This is why we need so much soil to be able to import. If this was a retaining wall against a bank, you would just be pulling some soil off the bank and reallocating it. But since we're using this retaining wall to build a raised bed from scratch, we've got to import it. As we're going along and packing this soil into the rocks, you're going to need to add more. If you look at this, on the back side, right now it's almost vertical because I've just pulled it all forward with my hands and packed it in. That won't be stable. It's going to take a while to build this, and as we go along, we don't want the soil here to just slump in a rainstorm and be lost. So we need to mind our angle of repose and make sure that the back of this is never steeper than a 45-degree angle. So as I pull soil forward and pack it against the rocks, I need to be constantly adding more soil to the back of the project. Since we're still focusing on the wall and not on the plants yet, I'm still not going to mix any organic matter into this. The middle will have organic matter mixed in, crazy amounts of it. But here along the edge, this still needs to be the inorganic soil that will pack nicely and hold these stones in a stable position. Okay? So I'll just keep going along with this and select some larger stones for the next course, and then we'll join back here. Now, when we're going from a lower course to a higher course, if you're doing a wall which has right angle corners, you want to start at that corner and get your best rocks right there and then extend out. This is clearly not the case in this instance. So where you have the freedom to pick any point along the wall to start, I like to start by asking myself if there's a location where I see a weak spot brewing. Okay? And if there is, then really focus on that spot, get it tied into the sides so it doesn't become a full-fledged weakness, and proceed out from there. Now I have just such a spot here. This is a potential weak spot brewing because I've got a little cluster of smaller stones. Got some nice long stones here, I've got some nice long stones here. That was a little shorter, but we have a lot of nice long stones going this way. But here we've got a cluster of some shorter ones. What I want to do is cover this crack, make sure I don't get a vertical crack in the middle of the weakness, in such a way that it's tied into the strength on either side. So the temptation that a lot of folks will have is to say, oh, look at this spot, and look at this nice big beautiful rock. They're perfect. I can just put that there and strengthen that weakness. But if I do that, look what I just did. Big vertical crack, big vertical crack. This is taking that weakness and making it weaker. Could I get away with it in this wall? Yeah, probably. It's not going to be that tall of a wall, but it's still bad. And anybody who knows anything about walling is going to look at this and scratch their head and think they goofed up there, right? So we don't want to do that. What we want to do instead is pick out a stone like this one, which I can set right over that location, bridge that crack with half of each stone sticking out on either side. So now when I place stones to the left and the right of it, I'm going to tie this little weak spot into those strengths. Now if I look here, these two stones are a little bit thinner than this one, so I've got a little bit of a downslope. If that downslope was towards the outside, that would be really bad. That could collapse the wall, even a fairly short wall. But because it's in the long direction of the wall, a stone sliding down that ramp isn't going to do anything except attempt to compress the length of the circle. So it has nowhere to go. It's completely trapped in space. So it's just fine. This stone that I had a minute ago has a little bit of a protuberance here on this edge. So I can set this one on here, and it will fit quite nicely. Tie the weakness into this strong stone and help flatten out my wall in this direction. Okay? Now I'm lining these stones up so that I have a nice vertical face this way. Okay? And all of the error, all of the gappiness I'm throwing into the middle. You see, I've got this big gap here. I'm just going to pack that with soil. Because it doesn't matter. This is not the top course, and that's not going to be visible in the final wall. Okay? So I will continue going around this circle, packing soil in the back of the stones. Now that we're starting to get into the upper layers of this wall, it's time to think about the planted aspect of the planted stone wall, right? That's part of the whole purpose of doing this way, is to have all these little nooks and crannies and gaps in the stones so that we can tuck some plants in there. These are 20 strawberry plants that I purchased this spring just in one of those boxes you get at hardware stores. If you get those, you need to heal them in immediately. So these are just healed into a pot, staying alive until I had a chance to start working on this wall. Now right here, this wad of dirt is part of this pre-fitted stone that I dry fit off camera and got ready so I know it fits here nicely. And this sort of dirt pocket is a nice pocket where we can stick one of these strawberry plants. So I'm just going to pull one up out. Out of this healing in pot. And I think I'll take this one. We've got his root system here. He's growing. We'll pull a little bit of this away. And now I want to extend these roots well back into the soil behind here. So we'll put a little soil down. We'll put him in. We'll cover him up with a little bit. Okay. And now we'll recheck and refit our stone. You want to take your time and be careful when you're doing this because we don't want to crush our little plant there. But we do have to compact the soil nicely so the stone stays where we put it. And that feels pretty good. So there we now officially have the start of a planted stone wall. This sort of big clump of soil is not good if you're not going to plant it. It'll wash out and it'll weaken your wall. But when you plant it, and we now have a strawberry plant in here, the plant will hold that soil and help strengthen your wall. Okay? This is one of the advantages of using stone for a building material for your raised beds rather than just wood plank or something like that, because you have the opportunity to take advantage of this vertical space. Now, a couple other stones that I dry fit here that I want to talk about. In this spot, I have these two stones which are a little lower than the ones on either side, so I needed some shims. So I went over to my pile and I got some real thin pieces and set them in level so that this stone will sit quite nicely right up atop them. And this is now going to be the top stone in this section of the wall. Okay? Over here, we have this. I'll need to pack some soil in there to really cement it, but over here we have another kind of irregular area. Let me move this aside. Where we have a low stone and then a high stone here and here. Okay? So, again, this is a good place. This is why we need stones like this that have low and high places. And it's another great opportunity that we can put him in there. Okay? There's another pocket right here that we can put a strawberry plant. So, let's flip that up. Let's move some soil down in here. Let's grab this other plant that I got up. Put him in. Got some soil around his roots. We're supposed to get some rain later today, and I really hope that we do. Okay. And now we can wiggle and wriggle this in until it fits properly and mates up with this one. And this will take a little bit more finagling until it's in its final condition. But you get the idea. So now we have two strawberry plants planted here in our stone wall. Now a note, you don't need a strawberry plant for every location that you want to stick one because they make these long stolons. Okay? And you can see this little node already has those two, that little cluster, there's 5 little adventitious roots coming out. So I can put the parent in one spot, one crevice, and then weave this into some other crevices and extend it along. So there's 2 additional strawberry plants beyond the original 20 that I bought for this project. If I don't get every one of these pockets planted this year, that's okay, because I can run stolons into them for next year. I just wanted to take a second and show you the back side of this stone wall. You have the foundation stones, second course, third course, fourth course.
And you can see how each one, starting with the narrow foundation stones, is slightly wider than the preceding. This gives it the natural tendency to back lean, trying to fall into the bed rather than out from it. And that geometry is what gives us the stability in this style of stone walling.
Okay, we're putting the project here to bed for the day, and there's a couple things that we need to do. One is water it, which I have mostly done already, because we have plants in place, and we want to make sure that they don't dry out. Secondly, I'm putting a layer of mulch down on top of the soil, on top of this dry mineral soil, which is holding the rocks together, because they're calling for a gully washer tonight, and I want the rain to do its worst to the mulch and not wash away all of the soil and undo this beautiful stone that we've put in place here. This is about, I would guess, 2/3 of a ton of stone that I've laid today. This is going to be at least a 3 or 4 ton project. I've got about 1 3/4 tons. I'm out of these stones, so I need to go back and buy some more. And I'm going to continue laying most of this course off camera. When it comes time to start laying out the spiral, the inner spiral of the spiraler bed, we will of course film that and continue with the project together. So if you're enjoying this, I hope you'll give it a big old thumbs up so the YouTube algorithm knows that it's worth showing to other folks. And I will see you next time when we continue the project here at Old Ways Rising Farm.